In the summer of 1518, the city of Strasbourg became a nightclub with no exits. A woman named Frau Troffea stepped into a narrow cobblestone street and began to dance. Not with joy, not with music, but with a silent, frantic energy that no one could explain. She danced for days, her body moving without rest, her eyes wide and glazed, sweat drenching her hair. Soon she wasn't alone. One by one, dozens, then hundreds of her neighbors joined her in this bizarre, unstoppable marathon. What was happening in Strasbourg? This wasn't a celebration, it was a crisis. The city's physicians, baffled by this phenomenon, diagnosed it as hot blood. Their prescription? More dancing. They believed the afflicted needed to literally dance the fever out of their systems. So the city council, in a move that seems utterly surreal today, took official action. They cleared out guild halls, set up open-air stages in the market squares, and even hired musicians to provide a soundtrack for the chaos. They thought that if they just let the dancers get it all out of their system, the plague would pass. Spoiler alert. It stayed in their system until their hearts literally stopped. Imagine the scene. A town square packed with 400 people, jerking and twirling in a synchronized, terrifying trance. The musicians playing lutes and drums grew exhausted, but the dancers did not. They moved until their feet bled, until their bones broke, until, one by one, they collapsed from strokes, heart attacks, and sheer exhaustion. The dancing plague, as it came to be known, claimed lives day after day. The authorities, realizing their cure was only making things worse, eventually banned the music and public dancing. The afflicted were rounded up and taken to a mountain shrine to pray for absolution. Slowly, mysteriously, the dancing subsided. For centuries, this event has been a historical enigma. Was it a case of mass hysteria, a shared psychological breakdown triggered by the immense hardships of the time? The people of 16th century Strasbourg lived under the constant threat of famine, poverty, and disease. The psychological pressure was immense. Could this collective stress have manifested physically as a convulsive, uncontrollable urge to move? This theory suggests that the minds of an entire community, under unbearable strain, simply broke from reality. The dancing wasn't a choice. It was a symptom of a deeper societal sickness, a desperate physical expression of mental anguish. The prevailing belief was that the dancers were suffering from a curse or divine punishment. Superstition was rampant, and the idea that Saint Vitus, a Catholic saint, could inflict a dancing curse upon sinners was a popular explanation. People believed that by offending the saint, they had doomed themselves to this horrifying fate. This belief was so powerful that it may have become a self-fulfilling prophecy. In a world where the supernatural was considered an everyday reality, the fear of a curse could have been potent enough to trigger a psychosomatic response on a massive scale. If you genuinely believe you've been cursed to dance, your body might just obey. But there's another, more scientific theory that points to a physical culprit. A fungus called ergot, which grows on damp rye, the primary grain used for bread at the time. Ergot contains chemical compounds that are startlingly similar to LSD. When ingested, this mold can cause a condition known as ergotism, which has two main forms. One causes gangrene, but the other, the convulsive form, leads to terrifying symptoms: seizures, muscle spasms, hallucinations, and delirium. Sound familiar? It's a near-perfect match for the descriptions of the dancing plague's victims. Let's step into a modern lab for a moment. When scientists test rye bread contaminated with ergot mold, they isolate the psychoactive alkaloids responsible for these effects. Imagine hundreds of people, already malnourished and living in fear, unknowingly consuming this potent hallucinogen with their daily bread. The resulting mass poisoning would look less like a party and more like a citywide bad trip. Each person would be trapped in their own private nightmare, but their shared symptoms, the spasms, the frantic movements, would create the illusion of a coordinated dance. This theory provides a biological explanation for an event that otherwise seems to defy logic. However, the ergotism theory isn't perfect. Critics point out that ergot poisoning typically makes people very ill and unable to perform coordinated physical activity for days on end. Could someone truly dance for a week straight while their body was being ravaged by a toxic fungus? It seems unlikely. Furthermore, historical records indicate that dancing was the primary symptom, not accompanied by the other common signs of convulsive ergotism. And why did it affect only this specific region at this specific time? If it were simply tainted bread, wouldn't the outbreak have been more widespread or occurred more frequently? This leads many historians back to the idea of mass psychogenic illness or mass hysteria. It's a powerful, fascinating, and unsettling phenomenon where psychological distress manifests as shared physical symptoms within a cohesive group. Think of it as a social contagion. One person, like Frau Troffea, begins exhibiting strange symptoms. Others, already on edge and highly suggestible, witness it. Fear and anxiety spread, and soon their own brains begin to replicate those same symptoms. They aren't faking it. Their belief and stress are so profound that they genuinely experience the physical sensations. The dancing plague might be one of history's most extreme examples of the mind's power over the body. The context of 1518 is crucial. This was a time of immense social and religious upheaval. The Protestant Reformation was just beginning, challenging centuries of established belief. The world was fraught with anxiety and uncertainty. In this volatile atmosphere, a collective psychological break seems more plausible. The dancing could have been an unconscious release valve for a society at its breaking point. It was a bizarre, tragic performance of a community's collective trauma. The stage was set, the actors were primed, and all it took was one person to start the show. So, what really happened? Was it a psychological breakdown, a biological poisoning, or a combination of both? Perhaps the ergot theory and the mass hysteria theory aren't mutually exclusive. Maybe a small-scale ergot poisoning triggered the initial symptoms in a few susceptible individuals. In the hyper-anxious and superstitious environment of Strasbourg, this bizarre behavior could have then spread like wildfire through social contagion. The mold provided the spark, and the collective psyche provided the fuel for the inferno. This hybrid theory helps explain both the bizarre physical symptoms and their rapid localized spread. The dancing plague of 1518 wasn't an isolated incident. Similar, smaller-scale dancing manias were reported across Europe throughout the medieval period. But Strasbourg's was the largest, the deadliest, and the best documented. It serves as a chilling reminder of a time when the lines between medicine, religion, and magic were blurred, and when the human mind, under extreme pressure, could push the body to its absolute limits and beyond. The story ended as strangely as it began. As the summer faded, so did the mania. The exhausted survivors stopped dancing, and the city slowly returned to a fragile sense of normalcy. When dawn finally broke over the empty streets of Strasbourg, the square was silent. The stages were empty, the music gone. All that remained were the scuff marks on the cobblestones and perhaps a single lone shoe, a silent testament to the month the city danced itself to death. This event remains a haunting puzzle, a dark intersection of history, psychology, and biology. It forces us to confront the terrifying power of the human mind and the mysterious ways it can break. Thank you for watching. If you found this dive into history as fascinating as I did, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more explorations of history's strangest mysteries. See you next time.